So back in May of 2020, I took the position of a supervisor at a famous chip plant, and it was a horrible experience. Aside from the sexual harassment, the incompetent managers, improper training, constant disagreements with my team, and working on holidays, being forced to work 14 work days, it just wasn't worth it. Like at that point, I was just like, why am I doing this? Like the money is great, don't get me wrong, but is my mental health okay? And if y'all don't know, your girl is pretty big on her mental health. Welcome back to my channel, Viaglo. If you're new here, my name is Gloria and I'm a full-time reseller on multiple different apps, and I resell clothes and shit. So in today's video, I actually want to talk to you guys about why I quit my full-time job working at a famous chip plant to be a full-time reseller, and I want to give you guys a story time and just kind of talk about the transition and how it's been going so far. So last year at this time, I actually put in my 2-week notice, and then I worked for 1 full week, and then I just stopped going because the work environment was so fucking toxic that I was just kind of like, I ain't gotta put up with this. So back in May of 2020, I actually started with the company. I pretty much walked into the supervisor position. I applied to be a regular, and they saw my resume and I was a manager at most of all of my jobs, so they bumped me up and said, hey, would you like to be a supervisor? And I'm like, of course. I made much more money being a supervisor than, you know, a regular employee, so of course I took it because, you know, this was right there in the thick of the pandemic, so I was just kind of like, why the fuck not? So I accepted the position as a supervisor, and I quickly learned that I wasn't going to get any training. I absolutely hate that. If you guys know anything about me, I love structure. Now, I didn't think that walking into a job, especially a manager position, that a company would feel so comfortable with not training you properly so you can know everything. They felt more comfortable with you just learning everything yourself and kind of jumping into it and doing it that way. That doesn't work for me. So after about a year of being with the company, I realized that I wasn't going to get any training, and at that point in time, I had already mentally clocked out and checked out of the job. So I was just doing basically the bare minimum at this point, and I didn't like that the expectations were high, but then there was no proper training, and they really buckled down on figure it out. And I've never been that type of person. Now, don't get me wrong, like I know how to figure out small situations, but what I was doing in this particular department is not something that you figure out. This particular department, you actually have to know the training, because if OSHA or if anything would have happened and they had to step in, what am I going to say? Oh, well, I just learned this on my own. Like, yeah, my supervisor, my department manager, they didn't train me. I just figured it out. And they're going to be like, oh, okay, well, that's wrong. So then I can be like, oh, okay. So that was my biggest thing. So I quit within a year. What I did was I put in for my vacation, because at this particular company, they're actually really fucking smart. They know people don't last long, so they make you wait a full year before you can actually receive your vacation. So what I did was, in May of 2021, I mentally said, you know what? I don't think I want to do this anymore. And at that time, I actually was out on leave, and I went really hard with my reselling in those 3 weeks that I was out on leave, and I made like $1,400. And I realized, wow, if I did this full-time 4 weeks out of the month, I think I could do something with this. Like, I think I can make a lot more money, because at the time I was like buying really low tier brands. So I know that if I just bumped up my game and got better with my reselling, I could do this full time and I don't have to work at this shitty ass company. So that's what the fuck I did. So I went back in June of 2021 after my long 3-week hiatus of work, and I realized I just can't do this. Like, and I'm not gonna do this. It was just a long laundry list of things that I felt like this is beneath me at this point, and I checked out. Like, and I hate to say that, because with me being a supervisor, I shouldn't check out. Now, of course, I was still there for my team, but I felt like I was just over it. Like, I was completely over it, and it was time for me to go. So my vacation was at the very end of the month, because I was going to Puerto Rico. If you guys haven't watched that vlog, please go watch it. The editing is not as good as it is now, but work with me, okay? So anyways, so I end up waiting, and I put in my 2 weeks like a week before my vacation, which I thought that I was going to screw myself with that, but I just couldn't do it anymore. So the last straw for me was actually being threatened by a person on my team saying that he wanted to kill me. So at that point I was like, girl, get the fuck up out of here. And at that time I actually was not scared for my life, but of course I had to, like, you know, apply that pressure. Someone on my team that I was really close with, they let me know that it was said while I wasn't there. And I didn't take it very lightly because this guy was pretty off the hinge. If you guys want to stick around for a story time, I got you at the end about this guy. So I didn't take it lightly because I do think that something was off with the guy. So I went to a supervisor. He wasn't my direct supervisor, but he was a supervisor. That was my homie. But anyways, so I went and talked to him and I was like, hey, you know, I don't feel comfortable, and mind y'all, I had mentally already checked out of the job. Like, I was already done. This was just the icing on the cake. This was like that final nail in the coffin. I was like, yes, this is my get out. Okay, so I let him know I didn't feel safe, I didn't feel comfortable. So I went home that day, which they didn't want me to, because the way that it worked, like the off days, me or my supervisor would actually be there, and if he's off, those are the days that I needed to be there. But like I said, I didn't give a shit. I didn't want to work there anymore. I was over it and it was just time to go. Somebody threatened to kill me. It's not even worth it anymore. So after I talked to my supervisor, they let me go home, and during that time I was thinking like, okay, do I really want to do this? So I didn't go for the next 2 days. So yeah, so after I went in that one day, I realized I just can't do this anymore. So I essentially just like quit. I went on my vacation. I had a great time and I never showed back up to that company. But yeah, so once my direct supervisor reached out, I didn't respond just because I felt like, okay, you clearly know that I'm done. So he was pretty big on making sure that I put my 2-week notice in just in case I need to go back to the company. I'm not stepping foot at that job, and honestly I would only recommend working at that job if you have a plan of maybe going hard for 6 months and getting the fuck up out of there. That is not a longevity job. Yes, the money is good, but I feel like the back-breaking labor, the being forced on your off days, you having to work up to 14 days straight, you being forced to work on all the holidays, like it just wasn't worth it. Like, it just really wasn't worth it. And I feel like when you aren't, also speaking for myself, properly trained, I do think that that also plays the biggest role in how far you're going to get. And what really drew me back was my peers, the other supervisors. They were pretty big. This was a male dominated place, of course, y'all know that, but they were pretty big on just, you know, you just jump in there and you figure it out. I'm trying not to say too much, but this is just not a place you just jump and figure things out. Like, if a health inspector come up in here and I'm doing something that is not right, but I'm assuming like, oh, okay, well, I have to figure it out, we're gonna get dinged, like, and it's gonna be my ass. So why would I do that? So yeah, that job just didn't work for me. I loved it at first. The first 6 months, I'm not going to talk too much shit about it, but the first 6 months, I loved that job. I felt like I was right at home, and I hate to even say that because I don't even like working like that, but I felt right at home. The team that I initially started with, like, they were great, and I feel like everything kind of changed around, like, I want to say December, January. We got some new people, lost some people, and the energy shifted in the team because I feel like before we were actually a team. Like, and I don't even like the culture of thinking that your job is your family, because I feel like that's a cult thing, and I don't really agree with that. But essentially we kind of were, because we all looked out for each other, and I made sure that I looked out for them. And then, you know, the transition happened, and I am a big believer that I think that it was for me to get out. Like, I don't think that I was supposed to be there long term, and it needed to happen. So it worked, and I left at the nick of time before I lost all my marbles. So we're done with that. So July of 2021, which just last year, I hit the ground running. So what ended up happening was I went on a trip to Puerto Rico, like I just told y'all, because I had already had it previously planned. And then right after that, that following weekend, I went on another trip with my family for like a family vacation. So we had that. Once I got back, I was like, okay, it's time to hit the ground running, because this is your job now. Like, you finally got what you've been wanting. So here we are. So I go ahead and I just go thrifting. I think I went thrifting damn near every single day, because I was just ready to beef up my closet and get the money flowing. And honestly, it was probably the best experience I've ever had, just being so free. And I think that was mostly important for me, is that not really having to clock in, clock out. Now, I did work at this particular time. I didn't work very long hours. I worked from like 9 a.m. to about 4, which, looking back on it, that was a pretty good time frame. And then I kind of graduated from working 7 a.m. to about 8 to 9 p.m. around November, December, January. And then I continuously had burnout, as y'all have saw if you watch my vlogs. I want to say maybe in December I had a burnout, so I took like a 2-week hiatus, and then in February it happened again, and then in April it happened again, and here we are in July, and your girl has finally cracked the code, I hope, of not being burnt out with reselling and YouTube and all of this. So yeah, that is pretty much a nice little update. So I've made so many mistakes this first year as a reseller. I did do a few videos talking about them. One was a cringy video and another one was a reseller regrets. Now I kind of go more in depth with what I didn't like that I did, and just things that I look back on and they kind of make me cringe for the most part. And it has been a lesson learned. I feel like with any type of job, especially when you're an entrepreneur, it's going to be hard. Like, it's going to be hard. You are going to have trial and error. But once you find it, and by it I mean the magic, you're going to be good. And with me being a full-time reseller since July of 2021, here we are, July of 2022, I can honestly tell you that I did not get better at sourcing and picking quality items until about November, December. Like, so it took me 6 months before I got it together. 6 months before I got my finances with my business more in order. I feel like in the beginning I was very much so in la la land with my finances, and that is also something that I truly regret, is that I did not really set up a game plan prior to me quitting my job, and I really just kind of jumped in. Now, of course, it worked to my benefit. I didn't drown, if we're going to use the same analogy. I definitely figured out how to swim, but I feel like if you are fresh, baby, do not take that leap. It just so happened for me, I had already been reselling since, I want to say February of 2020. So I had been reselling for over a year before I became a full-time reseller. So I already kind of had an idea of how to do it. But if you just want to be a full-time reseller and you don't have no background on it, would not recommend. 100% would not recommend, because baby, you're gonna be stressed out, okay? So I honestly have to say the good and the bad of this reselling journey has been documented through all my vlogs. I appreciate everybody that watches my vlogs, because it's more of a behind the scenes of my life and just pretty much my day-to-day of how reselling and doing YouTube and just everything is for me. It's been nice to kind of watch my vlogs. Sometimes I'll watch them back, just to kind of look at the transition, or to look at how far I've come from where I started. This dog's outside. I've spent so much money on bad buys, fakes, damaged items, and I lost money that way because I couldn't sell it. I didn't know how to clean it. And honestly, y'all, like, I have realized too that I am not a reseller that likes to rehab items. So I know when I go sourcing that I need to thoroughly check the item, because I have no intentions of taking it home and fixing it back up. Like, no, if I can't throw it in a wash and then it's perfectly fine afterwards, I don't want to pick it up. And I feel like in the beginning of being a full-time reseller, I picked up bad things just because I saw the brand and I was just kind of like, oh, this is gonna sell. Get home, it's a fucking ripped backside. Somebody taped it, stapled it, and here I am. I just lost out on some money. Bought a fake, I believe it was like an Air Jordan jumpsuit, and I knew, like my right mind knew not to pick it up at the thrift store, but I just kind of was like, it won't be here if I don't get it. Like, it won't be here if I don't get it. And I picked it up and I did some really heavy comps. She was not real, so I wasted money on that. It's been plenty of times I've picked up damaged items, and I have a habit of coming home and inventorying items, clipping the tag. That is a problem. I know a lot of resellers actually like to come home and try to get it under the light, and then if they see anything, they can return it. That is something that I probably should start doing, but I don't think I do. Because when I'm in the thrift store, I actually look over the item very, very thoroughly. So it is very rare now, anyways, maybe like the last 4 or 5 months, that I'll bring home something that is heavily flawed that I missed at the thrift store. So that is something that I really fucking hate it, because that's money. Like, who wants to waste money? Wasting money is just not that girl, okay? So I want to talk about 4 pros and cons of being a full-time reseller. So the first one is working for yourself. That is all great. That is dandy. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. You get to make your own work hours. You get to wake up whenever you feel like it. You get to just do whatever you want. But the con is you work for yourself. So it's only you that is doing everything. And that means that you are doing the sourcing. You are doing the photographing. You are doing the listing. You are doing the customer service. You are doing everything, okay? Everything. Unless you have some extra money, or you are just a reseller that makes a large quantity of money and you are able to afford someone to help you, then kudos to you. But for the people that don't have anybody helping them, this shit is not, like, you know, super easy as it looks. Like, yeah, it kind of does look easy. Like, okay, you get to shop all day and you get to list items. Like, okay, that shouldn't be hard. But baby, like, y'all don't understand. In order to make money, you have to list items. So yes, if I only listed like 5 items a day, no problem. But if I'm selling 10, 15 items a day, you know how much items I need to go and source to get that back up, and just to kind of have a nice little ratio, a nice little balance. The second one is the flexibility of the time. So naturally, you work for yourself, so you can start your work day whenever you please. I typically like to start mine like around 9 a.m. because I feel like that is the best time to start. However, I do have to tweak that when I want to go sourcing, because all of the Goodwills typically open at 9 a.m. So I do have to wake up a little bit earlier than I would like to make sure that I'm out there. So I do enjoy that I do have flexible hours. I get to take breaks for however long I feel like it. I can take a nap. I take naps. I'm pregnant, y'all, if y'all don't know. I take naps whenever I feel like it. Whenever my body is like, hey girl, it's time to take a nap, I can take a nap, wake back up, and finish whatever work I need to get done. So that is one of the pros of being a full-time reseller, is the flexibility of your schedule. The con of this is you lose money when you aren't working. Now, essentially, you don't always lose money, but I think when I'm looking in a sense of listing, the more you list, the more you make. And I feel like at the end of the day, as much as we don't want to come to terms with that, is very true. So I try to set a limit of about 10 listings per day, Monday through Friday. So that's 50 items a week that I will list new, and then roughly a week I'll make 25 to 30 sales. So it kind of balances, and it's a really nice ratio. I'm not like losing too much, or, you know, it's a good little balance there. But the thing is let's say I take a break and I don't feel like it. So prime example, in May, I didn't source the whole month. Like, I didn't go to one thrift store for the whole month of May because your girl was in her first trimester and the baby was beating my ass, okay? So I needed to take a break. So I didn't work. Essentially, I didn't work for the whole month of May. I laid on my couch and I did absolutely nothing, and it showed. Like, my sales absolutely showed. So yes, I have, you know, 2 200, 300 listings. However, in order to continuously make money, you have to continuously list items. So that is one of the cons, is you have to constantly be working in order to make the money. Okay, I kind of briefly talked about this one already, but this is more so about making your own hours. So like I said before, when I initially started, I would work from 9 to 4 p.m. and that was kind of like my window of work. That was a really good schedule. I still don't know how I was able to do that. You know what, I take that back. I actually know how I was able to do that, because I was picking up anything at thrift stores. I really wasn't vetting the items, so I would pick them up and I would be able to pick up my 15 items for that one thrift store, because at least about 10 to 14 of them, they weren't that good. So I was able to just pick up anything back then, but now I am heavily not picking up any and everything. So sometimes I'll leave a thrift store with nothing, you know, and I wasted 2 hours walking around searching and all of that. And I feel like comparing it to when I first became a reseller in that time frame, I was picking up any and everything. I didn't really care about the brands, didn't really check comps that much. So I was just picking them up and I was listing them. So it did get the listings there, but it wasn't quality items that would have got me a high profit. So that was something. So me working from 9 to 4, that was my time frame. And like I said, it graduated to me working from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., sometimes 10 p.m. I know in December of, you know, last year, I was working from like 7 a.m. all the way up until 10 p.m. It's been like multiple times. And that was me being a full-time reseller as well as a YouTuber. So it was a lot. And I also included Flip into the mix. And then fast forward to now, I actually work from 9 a.m. to about 8 p.m. every single day, Monday through Friday. And it is very taxing. I have got a lot of energy, which I'm so grateful for, that my baby is giving me energy for the second trimester. But for the most part, it's very tiring. Like working from 9 to 2 sourcing, and then from 2 to about 6 I am listing and photographing and doing all of that and cross listing, and then from 6 to 8 I'm working on YouTube. So it's kind of hard a little bit, but this is the life that I chose, so I can't really complain too much, you know. And then lastly, you get to shop for a living. Like, who does not want to shop for a living? It's fun, it's therapeutic, and it's just really nice to do. But the con of that is you are constantly spending money, and you are also gambling, because you could pick up an item and you just know it's going to do well, and then it doesn't. So that is also something that I feel like a lot of resellers don't really talk about too much. Like, some people like dabble in it, but they don't talk about it too much. Like, you can pick up an item and you could be like, look, okay, I've checked comps, this item's gonna sell, da 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 da. You list it and it's there for over a year, and you're dropping the price, and then you finally take it off and you send it to ThreadUp, and you barely make any profit, or you barely make the money that you spent on it. So it's a little tough sometimes, because you're spending money to make money. That's essentially what we do. We have to spend money to make it. Like, it's no other way around it. But you are also taking gambles on items. Sometimes you get very lucky. You hit the jackpot. You're able to find, you know, brands that are top tier that's going to make you a lot of money. And then sometimes you pick up brands that nobody really wants, but you think it looks nice, so then you end up selling it for a lot less than what you wanted to sell it for, and it was been a waste of time. So it's pretty tough out here, okay? So I'm going to talk about a few things that I wish I did differently before making that transition from the company to a full-time reseller. First, I wish I would have got my finances in order. So initially, I was going off of my emotions and how much I hated the job and how I didn't want to be there. I didn't think logically at this moment, and I typically think logically all the time. So at this particular time, I don't know what the fuck was going on. I just was like, I gotta go. So if I can go back, I would probably try to stay with the company for at least about a good 3 to 4 more months, just so I can save for a heavier rainy day fund, because you want to make sure that you have money stashed away before you just jump in, because you don't want to be caught slipping in these streets. Okay, I wasn't caught slipping in these streets, but I could have, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't really give like a nest egg, or, you know, just a stash away, a rainy day fund as big as I would have liked. Another one is not pick up any and everything at the thrift store. I had a really bad habit of this last summer. I did not care about brands. I was pretty much style heavy, and I do think that that hurt me in the long run, because I was picking up pieces that I was selling for, you know, maybe $18 to $25, and typically they would sell between $18, $20. I paid, you know, $7 to $10 for it. I wasn't making much of a profit on the back end, so that was just not a good thing for me. I wish I would have learned about the bins early on instead of going to only thrift stores, because I feel like having low cost of goods and a high profit margin is so important in this business, because you make more money when you spend less on the item. So all in all, I actually love being a full-time reseller. I don't think that I would do it any other way. If I can just continuously do this for the rest of my life until I meet a new chapter, I will do it, because like I said, the flexibility is key for me, and that is like the most important. I'm gonna be So I promised y'all a story time, so here it is. Now this is a raunchy, little bit of vulgar story time, so if you are not interested in something like that, please go ahead and click off this video, because it gets a little crazy, okay? But anyways, so I'm gonna give this guy a name. His name is Michael. It's a Michael's box right there, so I'm gonna call him Michael. So me and Michael didn't really start off on the best foot, because going in, he was actually supposed to, well, he didn't supposed to get the job. He applied for this manager position that I just walked into with no type of knowledge of the job in general. He had been working there for a few years, and he had applied the first time a supervisor position came up, didn't get it, and then he applied when I end up getting the job. So it was a little animosity there from the beginning, because he was upset about that. And he went to that shift, which I worked second shift. So he went to that shift to pretty much train everybody, which was very nice of him to do. So he just assumed that he was going to be the supervisor, and he wasn't. So he had a little bit of animosity towards me, which I completely understood, and I really was just like, just train them. You know, I don't really give a shit. So he ends up, you know, eventually coming around, and we end up talking, and he was very strange, to say the least. He used to like cut his eyes at me all the time, and it was very weird, but I just was like, whatever. So out of nowhere, he would randomly give me compliments. Now I want you guys to please envision, I worked at a plant, so I had to wear my hair in a hairnet, I had to wear safety glasses, I had to wear ear muffs, and sometimes a hard hat. I didn't really have to wear one, but when I would go to where we needed to go, I needed to put on a hard hat. So and the clothes that I wore, I just wore like an oversized t-shirt and like some, you know, manly work pants. So I didn't really understand where the compliments were coming from, because I'm like, bro, you don't even know what I look like. You know, but whatever. And working at a male dominated place, I already knew that it could have happened, because I am poking, if you will. So anyway, so he would say the compliments, I would just say thank you, whatever. So he finally got enough courage to kind of talk to me more in depth. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I am very much so not a surface level conversation type of person. I like to dive deep. So he hinted at something, and it intrigued me, because I'm just kind of like, that's very weird, like, tell me more. So he told me, like, this is very inappropriate with me being the supervisor, but he basically told me like what he likes to do, because he was very interested in women that were into women. So it was a particular type of woman, and granted, I'm not that woman, but it was a particular type of woman that he liked to go after, which at the time it didn't make sense, but it's actually dawning on me now. It's the dominance. So please, if you catch my drift, catch it. He liked dominant women, and I am very assertive just in general, because that's just my personality. But the type of women that he actually go for are women that likes women, because they are very dominant when you get what I'm trying to say. So he would only hang out with them, whatever. So he eventually tells me like what he likes to do with these, you know, and all of that. And I was intrigued, y'all. Like, it wasn't even just like a I want to do it with you. It was more of a like, I'm just intrigued that you are so comfortable telling me this. And he took it the opposite way. He took it like I wanted to do something with him, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. So he would talk to me about it, and I was just so like enamored, like, wow, this is crazy. No man has ever been so open to talk about this, which is more so, it's like the dominatrix. Like, he liked to get peed on, he liked to be in a cage, he liked to, you know, have a chain, and he's a dog, he barks. That's exactly what it was. So that's what I was intrigued by that you were so comfortable telling me this. So fast forward a little bit, it's a particular day that an employee leaves early. So he was training someone, but it was kind of toward the end of them being trained. They kind of already had an idea of what they needed to do, so I needed him to go and finish the job that the person ended up leaving. And he didn't like that. He got so upset, and he was just saying, why don't you make this other person do it? And at the time I was having him do it because he worked a lot quicker. So me being who I was very much so open with my team. Like, I am not that person that's like, well, do as I say. No, ma'am, I'm gonna let you know why I have you particularly doing it, or you know what I'm saying. Like, I've just always been very transparent, let's just say that. So I explained to him in a very calm tone, because you can tell when somebody is getting very angry and they're trying to like hold it down. So anyways, so he does the job. He doesn't do a good job, but it was expected. It is what it is. So he does it, and later that day he finishes and he talks to one of my peers about the situation. He was upset, whatever. So then my peer ended up talking to me about it, and I explained to him why I chose him to do it, whatever. So I didn't think anything of it. So the next day I come into work, and the big boss of our department tells me I need to come in for a meeting, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go in for the meeting, and this guy, Michael, had the audacity to sit there and say that I had been sexually harassing him. And y'all, I was so fucking livid, because I'm like, sexual harassment? You literally, I kind of left a part out, y'all, I forgot. He literally sent me a text, I want to say maybe like a week or two before that, about how he wanted me to, yeah. And I was just kind of like, ew, no. Mind you, it was a text message. So of course I had already took a screenshot of it, and initially I just kind of laughed about it, because I'm like, wow, this is so bold of you to do, and now I feel uncomfortable. So that's why those conversations completely stopped, because like I told y'all before, I was looking at it more of a like, I am so intrigued that you feel so comfortable telling me this, but he was looking at it like, okay, well, she wants to know more, so she must be into this type of thing. So anyways, go back to him saying that I was sexually harassing him, and he felt so uncomfortable on that shift, and he wanted to move to another shift. Now, it bothered me really bad, because I'm like, first of all, if you felt uncomfortable talking to me about these things, you could have shut it down. You could have been like, you know what, Gloria, I don't want to talk about this with you. This is just inappropriate, whatever the case is. But you didn't. You kept it going, and you sent me that text message. So when my supervisor is basically just saying like, hey, you know, you can't have those inappropriate work conversations here, which is completely understandable. I know that I was in the wrong for even engaging with him with those conversations. So I was more upset, because I'm like, okay, well, I have text messages in my phone that could show that there was absolutely no sexual harassment. If anybody was being sexually harassed, I was. But my manager was like, no, I don't want to see it. It's totally fine. Let's just make sure we don't do it anymore. And the dude even started to like fake cry, and I am a laugher when I am like angry. And I was laughing, because I'm like, wow, you really was so upset that you had to clean yesterday that you concocted this whole woe is me story so you could get out of working on the shift, because you just hated me so much, because you were so upset that you have to work at work. So at that point, my blockers went up, like I always do. When somebody pisses me off or somebody upsets me, they're dead to me. And I don't care what position I'm at. I don't give a fuck what it is. You are legit dead to me. Like I don't really play about people disrespecting me or lying on me. It's a no-go for me. So we sat in that meeting for about a good 30 minutes. I can't really remember too much, but I just remember him. It was sexual harassment, and me explaining, like, you know, it was mutual conversations, not necessarily on my part, but more so for him telling me everything, you know. So anyway, so after the meeting, like I said, he was done for me. He was done in my book. Don't only talk to me when you need something from me as far as me being your supervisor. Other than that, don't say a fucking word to me. Like, that was my mindset. So then new people come in and he is training them. And this particular person that he was training was a real hood booger. He was real thorough, real gutter, whatever you want to call it. He was one of those types, like a thug. I hate to even use that word, but he was like one of them. And Michael was a complete opposite. So you guys, please, I want you to, very flamboyant, comes off very homosexual, which is nothing wrong with being homosexual, but he was into women that look like men, and acted as man, dominant, assertive. Like, he wanted those attributes of a man, but in a woman's form, because I guess I don't know, and I don't want to kink shame, but I don't know if it makes him feel better to know that it's a woman that is doing these things to him versus a man. So anyways, so he goes on and trains this guy, and next thing I know, I have to do my daily duties of, like, you know, walking the area. So I'm walking the area, and the thug, I should give him a name, Brandon. So then Brandon is like hysterically laughing, and I'm like, what's so funny? And Michael is telling him, stop, stop, stop. So then I'm like, oh God, what the fuck is it? So then Michael was like, I should have never told you, I should have never told you. Brandon is still laughing, and he was like, you really asked this person, was he? And what bothered me most about that is that if you felt so sexually harassed, you wouldn't even be speaking about this outside of the conversation we just had with a supervisor. So that made me more upset. But at that point in time, I felt like I wanted to protect Michael, because I feel like in a man's space, I could see how that could be very embarrassing. And I felt like Michael was confiding into him, and Brandon was not a person that you confide in. Like, he just wasn't. And I feel like my stance on it when I asked Michael, was he gay? It wasn't to, like, necessarily put him in a box, but I just felt like everything he had told me, it just felt like it was in a box. Like, you know, the trauma in his childhood and everything. Like, I feel like we just were on two different accords. Like, I was just trying to see where his mental and his childhood trauma, where it led him, and he was looking at it more of a whole different aspect. So when Brandon was laughing and he was asking, like, you really asked him that? I didn't answer the question. So then I'm just like, oh God. So then I just leave it alone, and that happens. So now Brandon is talking to the other hood boogers about it, and they're all laughing. And at this point in time, I'm like, you know, you did this to yourself, Michael. Like, I didn't tell him that, but I'm like mentally saying, like, you did this to yourself. Like, why would you bring it back up? Like, nobody has talked about anything. I haven't said anything. I haven't talked to you. You haven't talked to me. Like, let it go. But y'all know how some people just love drama. So that gets brought back up. And here we are again. So then he goes on and, you know, is embarrassed, I guess. So at that point in time, this was roughly around the time that I was kind of transitioning, being like, I'm so over this job. I don't want to fucking be here, whatever the case. So leading up to that moment, I worked a few more days, and that's when I came in, and then one of my team members told me that Michael said he was gonna come up there with a gun and shoot me. So I mean, it's not funny, but it's just kind of like, where does that even come from? Like, I don't even talk to you. Like, where does that even come from at this point in time? So that was just my final straw, and I wish I could remember a lot more. I wish I had text messages and all of that, but you know, it's in the past. It's been over a year. I'm not harboring on it. But yeah, so that happened, and it was the strangest thing ever. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That is the story time of the weirdo that I managed. I hope I never come across a person like him again. Very off-hinged. Like, he was a nut. He was a fucking nut. But yeah, that is all that I have for y'all. If you made it this far, please leave a red heart so I know that you are a loyal watcher of Viaglo. But thank y'all so much for tuning in and watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.